My guest today is Tomás O'Leary, CEO and founder of Origina and president of Free ICT Europe. And Tomás is living proof that you can be successful in business and be a really nice guy. A testament to his success, he took his once locally focused Irish-based company into the leading independent IBM software maintenance company in the world. Tomás, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. That's a hell of an introduction.
Well, it's well deserved. The last time we spent any time together was probably back in 2009, 2010, thereabouts. You had moved into some nice swanky offices, and then the crash happened. What happened to your business after that?
I think the crash was happening as we met. Yeah, it probably maybe I didn't realize how bad it was. At the time, and like all these things in business, when it becomes difficult, it takes a while for you to recognize the challenges. But for sure, yeah, 2000 and whatever it was, the end of the 2000s, we moved into an office, and I had to, within a number of years, we had to get out of it. We used to rent that old office to you. I think you ran some of your sales training, or we partly rented it to you for a while. Which we had also attended. We used to come up from the swanky one, go up to the old one because we still had the lease. So at about 2011, then we actually had to get out of the fancy one and back into the old one and carry our furniture and our boxes and our computers up there with the small number of staff. I think I had 40 people or so working with us at the time. Not sure had you bought your Harley at that stage, Paul, had you?
Not the current one. It's a 2012 reg, so probably not. No.
Yeah, we bumped in, but very briefly shortly after that. I think when you had the Harley, I think a couple of years later. But the last time we probably talked in any great deal of detail, yeah. It was Listen, I think the one thing. I mean, we all know this, and anybody who has been in business and certainly who owned a business in that period, running from any time in the early 2000s or even before then. I mean, I set up my business originally in 1998. So I've been kind of doing this since I was 27 years of age. So I'm kind of the only thing I know how to do now. I'm getting better at it, I have to say. I think so. But that journey through the kind of boom in the tech industry, post year 2000, we're right up to the collapse of the Irish economy in 2008, and then the subsequent collapse of many, many businesses and who relied on the Irish economy, like my own. We didn't ultimately collapse completely, but we shrunk immeasurably. I mean, we had a business that turned over, 8 to 9 million at the top end in terms of revenues. It was a project-orientated business, required very good, strong sales skills, as you know. You're as soon as you do one deal, you're on to the next deal. So, and there's many, many businesses like that in Ireland across all industries, but in the tech industry is quite common. We found ourselves in enormous difficulty. Should have gone belly up and should have gone out of business. We found ourselves in a situation where our most trusted partners, that we thought were trusted partners, actually had it out for us. IBM, it turns out, they had a problem with us, and we survived that. We came through the other side of that, and we obviously shrunk down to a very, very small business and had to re-engineer ourselves, and that wasn't easy. But I guess if you're looking for the easy gig, I don't know how many easy gigs are out there, certainly not in today's world. So it makes you, the old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's absolutely true.
I would imagine that kind of experience would really knock you back. You have to downsize your business. Your key partner runs for the hills. It's not there to support you. That must be a really difficult place to be in.
Yeah, it was, and it's worse than that. It wasn't just that my key partner was not there to support me. My key partner was actually trying to put me out of business. So that's actually what was happening. I didn't realize it at the time, but I found out subsequently that there were meetings inside the IBM business in Ireland, they were having sessions to actually put us out of business. They would have meetings internally to figure out what they could do to take business away from us. So when you find that out, what does it do to you? It is quite devastating, you know, it's quite difficult. We found ourselves in a really, really tricky situation. And eventually what I had to do was I had to go to the partner and say, listen, we have this challenge. And I put my cards on the table, thinking that actually, even though we had some challenges and all these things always happen in business. You always have challenges with your partners. But actually what happened was they actually pulled the plug on me. So within a couple of weeks, they actually issued a termination notice for my contract. And it was a termination notice, not for what I said to them or anything else. It was a termination without cause. Now, I didn't know that could have happened. Because why? Because like most people, I hadn't read the contract. Oh, sorry. Yeah, maybe not most people, but in my experience, people do not read all the contracts that they sign. So we get them on our phones all the time. How many of us have actually accepted the terms and conditions on our phones? I mean, it was a study in the New York Times recently. Apparently, it would take you 17 years of your life to read all the terms and conditions you've actually accepted. So wow. It's, you know, so I hadn't. Well, I found myself, and so that was very difficult. But not only that happened, because that didn't kill me, then there was actually all sorts of rumors and, you know, things being spread. So that's a really hard place to be for anybody's business. Now, I don't know the motivation for any of that, and I actually don't care anymore. It doesn't matter to me anymore. But at the time, you either react in that you know, collapse, or I'm very fortunate actually. That type of adversity actually motivates me. So I was like, oh, that you think you're going to kill me? Not a chance. So it actually, and then what surprised me is that actually I did have that resilience and strength. That, of course, you doubt yourself, but you're not sure when the chips are down, can you really deliver against? So yeah, I did. And to cut a long story short, I created, within those 90-day termination period, a business to take business directly from IBM and to create, at the time, was a third-party data center repair business. And the only reason I succeeded at that, apart from the resilience and all those things, but the only reason, because I had customers, because this is, I know it's a sales show you do, I had customers that absolutely trusted me. And I didn't realize that at the time as much. I course I knew why they were doing business, but I never really analyzed it. I mean, even though I'd done training with you and, you know, I'd done all sorts of sales training on my time working in IBM. I mean, I used to love working when I was with IBM. I loved working there. Got some amazing training from them. Just for whatever reason, some individuals in IBM took it out on me, whatever the reason was. But I always felt that, you know, I had the ability to do stuff, but I never realized that your customers are the people ultimately that say, and they saved me. One customer gives me a contract when I was telling him I was dead, because I didn't want to do it remotely. I wanted to, that's the other thing, I think a lesson, don't walk away from stuff, because you'd be surprised what happens if you confront the challenges and confront even the danger. Don't walk away. So I actually went, I said, no, I'm going to meet every single one of our customers. Now, we didn't have that many customers. We had probably 40 companies that we did business with reasonably regularly. So it wasn't huge, but they're all many of the big names in Ireland. And some of them were Irish companies, some of them were multinationals. And almost, I think, bar 3 or 4, who for other reasons had challenges coming to us, all of them wanted to stay with us. And they stayed with us because of me, possibly, but also because of like Rowan and my business partner and other people who had working with me. They trusted me and they trusted my company and wanted to help me. And from that, actually, I created a third-party data center repair business. Went from having literally, because overnight, 90 days, I would have been out of business. I wouldn't have been able to trade. I was left with debts. I was left with we can't do any more new business. Nobody else is going to sign me up because they are market. If you can't sell someone else's technology, and what are you going to do? You know, I can't create a consulting business overnight. You know, I can't have guys sitting on my books and paying them salary and have no money coming in. So you have to salvage it. So I managed to salvage the business with the help of my customers, and overnight created a business that had, I think I signed in excess of €1 million worth of contracts. That wasn't a lot, but it was enough to keep the lights on, and much more profitable business as well. Now, the challenge was I didn't know how to do it. When the guy gave me the contract, can you do this? I took it off him and I said, can you give me 48 hours? I'll come back to you. So I didn't promise him something that I couldn't deliver on. So I went away and I wanted to make sure, because I could see this customer trusted me. So it had to be 100%, or I would lose that trust really quickly if I pulled the wool over his eyes. And I was able to find out how, there was a whole, and I didn't even know this at the time, there was a whole industry and market. It's been around for years of independent repair. We all know it as consumers if we bring our cars after the warranty's expired, but in the IT industry, when you're part of the kind of what they call the prime, you mentioned free ICT. So this is what I do all the time. I support the secondary market, but I was part of the primary market. Yeah. So as part of the prime, because I was a partner of IBM's, I was a partner of VMware's and whatever. So we were part of the primary market. So I never knew anything about the secondary market. It's like as if, oh, don't look over there. There's something dodgy going on. And in actual fact, no, there's actually some really reputable companies in that space. Yeah. And they had figured it out.
Yeah. I wonder, by the way, when I read free ICT, I just thought you guys were giving it away for free. That was like freeware. That's what it was. But
not the first.
Your story, Tomás, is a really inspiring one. But what I took away from it, listening to it, is that you mentioned overnight you had to, but in some respects, you're like those pop stars, rock stars who are, it's a 10-year overnight success, that those relationships you had with your customers were absolutely vital. I mean, there was your own reaction, but then there was also the base, your environment, which your customers who trusted you because they knew, and I remember Roland as well. I mean, when I met you guys, you always had that sense was that you would never let people down, that if, when stuff happens and the proverbials hit the fan, as it always does, who's going to be in your corner? And as individuals that you had that relationship, they could trust that, where a big company, big brand, they know that when trouble happens, they just go running for the hills, as you've discovered. So I think that was important, as you said, so for people to make those investments. And I see it a lot in sales where people will say, well, look, here's my territory. I don't know, will I have it even next year? So I don't spend that much time on it, investing in the relationships. And I think your story is highlights how important it is to do that. But also then your reaction, 90 days, that's not a lot of time to turn yourself around and steady the ship and deal with the trauma that you were facing with. So to be able to dig deep like that and have that grit is truly inspiring. So thanks for sharing that. I want to move us on though, because I know over those times, whether that was before in your old business, I should say before Crash, and then in the new business as you built it up, you have built more than one sales team, and you must have learned a lot along the way when it comes to hiring, developing, retaining key staff. What are some of the key lessons you've learned about that? Let's start with hiring first, about hiring the right kind of people. What advice would you give to people if you're to do it again?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very, very difficult one, and I think sales is one of the most challenging areas to hire in. Personally, I would imagine if you talk to anybody in the sales profession, as I know you do regularly, they would agree. We kind of look for three things now when we're hiring people. The first is that you need to be able to have demonstrable evidence that the person is able to do the job that you're asking them to do. All right. So clearly in sales, you need to have there needs to be real evidence. I'll give you one example of this. We were hiring 2 years ago. We were hiring our first people in 2019. So in kind of March or April 2019, we put some feelers out to some contacts I had in the US. And we came across a guy who had worked in a bunch of different places, including IBM. And he came highly recommended from a contact of mine in the US that I knew, but not very well, but he was a guy I liked and I trusted. So I said, yeah, we'll have a look with him. And we had a conversation. It was a really, really good conversation. Like this, we did a Zoom call. So we took a punt and said we'd bring him over to Dublin. So we actually flew him in to Dublin, all right? And we picked him up. He landed in the morning, and we picked him up from his hotel. He had 2 hours sleep. I think he landed at 5 a.m. We picked him up at 8. There happened to be a conference or something going on around. So a lot of people we talk to now are in the IT asset management space. It just happened to be a European IT asset management and a round table or something going on in Dublin that we were going to go to anyway. So we dragged him along to that. So he just got off the plane. And we brought him then from there. We had some lunch with him and then brought him to the office and had an interview. Okay. And then that evening brought him out for dinner. We went back in his hotel and flew home. And we wanted to test 3 things. We wanted to test, one, did he know what he was doing? Okay. Could he sell? And the second one we needed to test was, did he have resilience? All right. Clearly picking him up at the airport or picking him up at his hotel after 2 hours sleep and doing what we did was going to heavily test his resilience. Could he last and have a beer with us that night? And the last thing we wanted to test, though, as well, which is why we spent so much time with them under those environments, was that, do we like him? All right. And did he like us? And they are actually the attributes we're always looking for in everybody, in every role. So when we're hiring, but in his case, what happened was we started to dig into, tell me about the sales, the jobs that you did, the sales deals that you did. Tell me more. You know, sort of skills that you teach all the time. Like, tell me more. Like he was talking about doing a deal with, let's say, it doesn't name the company, Boeing, and he was selling Boeing. I said, "What did you sell?" So he described, "What was that? Why did they buy that from you? Were you involved in the sales pitch? Did you write the proposal? Did you? No, that was written by somebody else. Did you then do the presentation? Well, I was part of the presentation. Which part of the presentation?" So we actually went into, you know, so it sounds like an interrogation. It was done it wasn't done in a confrontational way, but and whether you do it like that I just described, or you do it over a longer period of time, what you need to know is, have they actually done what you're asking them to do before? And if they haven't, can they still do what you're asking them to do? Okay. Now it's possible someone hasn't done what you've asked them to do, but I think that's the thing I think we miss when we're hiring for any job, is that this, and salespeople are the worst at it, I suspect, because we do this with our customers, yet we don't do it when we're hiring as much. We just get easily sold to by the sales guy. He's giving you the sales pattern, but you haven't really dug deep, right? You have to really dig deep. And when you do that, you'll get a better candidate. Yep. Now, obviously, you can't do that necessarily to the same extent if, depending on the level. We have in our sales team, we have 25 people now in the sales team. So we have everything from inside salespeople who are maybe doing the first or second job, right through to guys who are more seasoned sales guys than I am myself. Okay, so we have the full spectrum, and like all the companies, we have probably the full level of quality as well. So it's more difficult to maybe establish that with the guy coming in, it's his first or second jobs. But there are things you can still test. You still can test. Can they make a phone call? Have they got the basic phone etiquette, email etiquette? So you don't have to teach them everything from scratch. So I think that's it. So they're the three things we look for, and we still have that as our Bible. And I'm not saying we get it right, because we don't. We get it probably wrong a lot, but we don't. We get it wrong far less than we used to get it wrong.
No, I wanted to ask you then, because you said you had 25 salespeople in the organization at one degree or another, and I'm guessing many of them are remote. And I know that you were managing people remotely even before the pandemic hit. What are some of the challenges? I mean, how do you keep people motivated? How do you create that team culture when you have people from different cultures, then not physically together?
Yeah. I guess we will only know how successful we are in the future. So I think we have some level of success today. It is difficult. I think there's a lot of pressure on people working from home. It doesn't suit. Go back to that spectrum of people. That person who's maybe first or second job could well be living at home, or So he's in his bedroom or her bedroom, or having to use mommy and daddy's table, and there's stress at home, and dad's trying to work from home, and the younger brother or sister is also at school. It could be that, or they could be in an apartment, 3-bed apartment. That was all great when two of them were from the countryside and went home at weekends, and they had the place to themselves. Now they're all on top of each other. So you've got a whole spectrum of it. I think what you have to do is you've got to try to do a couple of things. You've got to try. There's a balance between applying pressure, okay? And I used to be terrible at this. I have to admit, I was always putting too much pressure on people. We'd say that I was, because you'd set, and I still do some of this, but I'm not as bad. I set unrealistic expectations because I have them on myself, but then try to give that to somebody else. It just doesn't work, And when you're the business owner, if you don't hit all your expectations, it's okay, still have the business. Whereas with the sales guy, you don't get your commission, you don't get your check, you don't get, and it's not just that, it's also, you need fulfillment. Fulfillment comes from achieving your goals, And so I think you have to get that balance right in the first instance. You've got to find ways to connect with them. So I was laughing this morning. I was telling I do a podcast as well called, I do a plug for it here, two Irish guys discussing software with Walsh. So I was, we call him Bren. So I would say to Bren, listen, Bren, I'm doing this podcast. Remember Paul Hannigan? Was he ever Paul? I said, I'm doing this podcast with Paul, and he's asking me about sales. He should have you as a guest. I'm the wrong guy. So, but Brent was telling me what he's doing. He's connecting with all 25 of his staff regularly. Yeah. Now, some of them don't report directly to him at all. So he runs our global sales team, and he does that regularly. We also do things like we have a you laugh at this. We do a weekly call. It's a 30-minute call. The whole company joins. Okay, and we used to do a year. We've done it for years. It's our rhythm. Now, we used to do it in the morning. We now do it 3:00 because we want to catch we have a Dallas office as well. So they all come on, and wherever we've got a couple of guys living in Philadelphia and New York and other places. So they'll come on, and there'll be it's all about a bit of good news, a bit of update on the numbers, because we all get measured on the numbers clearly. So, and we don't talk about revenue, by the way. Revenue to some people in the business means nothing. So we actually count deals. So we count the numbers of deals by type. We've got 3 types of deals that we measure. All right. So we say, we've got a target for the number of deals. So it's a more kind of comprehensible number. It's like, we had to do 47 deals in the last quarter. Yeah. So, and 20 of them had to be new deals. Yeah. So so we have a name for everything. And so we take them through where we are, where do we think we're going to come. So it's me, I run the meeting. And then what I do is a kind of a little catch up with people across the business. And nobody knows who I'm going to ask, but I don't put them under pressure. So I do a kind of little interview. Say, well, who have we not? So I'll do things like, who have we not heard from today? It could be any, and I'll make sure I hit everybody in the business over a quarter. No matter where they sit in the organization. And I'll obviously, the ones that are more, maybe a little bit nervous, I'll be more forgiving and trying to get them in on the call. And I really enjoy it. And I think people appreciate it. Like it's a connection. Yeah. And they get to know what people are up to. And the reason I do it at the basis of not telling anybody about it, because they don't know when they're going to come on. So they don't have to, and so usually it's a surprise them when they come on, and it's like, okay, what have I got to say? And I'll bring them through that. It's only 20 seconds, 30 seconds. They can talk for as long as they want or as short as they want. I don't put them under any pressure. So we get these connections, and we do things like town halls, and we do, they're very American, but very useful things to do, So I think you have to try to connect with your team. You've got to make them feel like they're part of a family. Like we're very much have a view, like, let's try and make everybody feel that we're on the same journey together. And if you can do that, and it's not easy, then at least you're winning half the battle.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there when you said that they're part of the journey. Being part of a family is one thing, and that's good, but also, what's the story? Where's it going? I think that's another one as well, because then people have something to look forward to. I heard one guy said the key to happiness was something to look forward to something to do and someone to love. And I think that's true in a company as well, because you have colleagues who do in that sense respect, admire, and love their colleagues when they get to know them over time, and then you have something to do. But the key thing is there's something to look forward to for sure. And it sounds like from everything you're saying that the business is going really well, and there is a future. And again, who knows? 10 years time, it could be a completely different business, right?
Well, it will be. It's already a business. I mean, I was looking the other day. I think I had it on my desk here. I was thinking about, you asked me something in your email, and I was looking at a list that I still keep now from 2017. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about the hardware business that I set up. I actually sold that in 2018. Okay, so in June 2017, I have a telephone list here somewhere on the desk. It's here. Yeah, so we had 13 people in what was 2 companies then. A year later, I sold off the hardware company. It had 7 staff. Okay, so of the 13, 7 of them worked in the hardware business, and 6 then worked in the software business. So we had 6 actual staff in the business that were dedicated to software. Now we all worked a little bit between both. And in 2017, then that year, it was our 3rd year of doing business. We measure, I mentioned deals, but if we're talking about revenue, we measure how much all our contracts are annual contracts, okay? So how much do we bill out? So the accountants will tell you the revenue is slightly different because you can't recognize it all. But we did 3 million euros worth of billings in software alone, okay? So we passed out the hardware business, and a year later we sold it. But this year we'll do 30 million.
Wow.
Right? So we've already done in this quarter almost as much business as we did in all of 2019.
Wow. You've
So
got 10x your business in 3 years.
What?
You've gone 10 times the business revenue in 3 years, from 2017 to now.
To 2021. So 17 to 18, 18 to 19, 19 to 20. So in 4 years, yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. That's absolutely incredible, because the rule of thumb I've seen for a steady business, if you're growing at a sustainable rate, is to double every 3 years. So,
well, I'll tell you, we already know. So here's the thing: we measure. We're measuring since the beginning of November. So I've told you that we did in the last quarter alone, we did 20 new customers. Okay, as well as our renewed existing customers and more business existing ones. We did 20 new clients. Okay, so we know how the business grows. It's obviously going to grow on the back of new customers. We have a goal to get to 1,000. You know, why 1,000? Because, you know, I guess why not? Yeah. You got to pick a number. It's a number big enough to be ambitious enough, but also not too big that you think you can't get to it. So we think there's maybe 20,000 companies in the world, our data says, that are spending enough money with IBM today globally, and will still be spending enough money. And enough money means they will be able to save enough money by coming to us. Is predominantly, remember, at the end of the day, all the other things we do for customers, the primary driver is often obviously cost. We save people a lot of money. Okay, so we know we can get to 1,000 customers. We don't know how long that's going to take us. Okay, but what we do know is that if we hit 50, and we're working on this already, 50 new logos so we've done 20 this quarter. It's our first quarter of our new financial year. We started on the 1st of November, and we're closing today. It's the last day of our first quarter, and we're there. We've got the 20. We do 50 in the first quarter next year. We'll hit 250 by the end of 2022, which means that we'll be able to do the 1,000 by the end of 2025. If that's the case, Paul, we'll probably be turning over 250, 300 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
That will be a big company.
When you think about that and you think back to those 90 days, how does that make you feel?
Oh, well, proud of myself, I guess. Yeah, proud of myself. Thankful that actually those guys tried to beat me up. It's like you got bullied down the alleyway and you learned karate, and you then were on, you know, your next thing you're on in the Olympics or something. You know, so.
But isn't it funny that sometimes we think that in adversity we find the best of ourselves, I think. And we can use that as the energy. I remember David Sanders saying, if you want to motivate yourself, just think about who's waiting for you to fail. Somebody who would take some joy, some schadenfreude in your failure. And in that alone, you will find motivation to continue. Now, you had that in spades because you had the man, coming down heavy on you and literally taking your livelihood, not just away from you. And I think maybe what's in this as well is that it's not just you, because my sense of that is you could attack me personally and it doesn't bother me, but threaten my family, that's a whole different ball game. And I think when somebody threatens to take away your livelihood, it's more than just about yourself. And so, but yeah, just looking back at that, you must smile a lot thinking about that. That's just an incredible story. So kudos to you. Tell me, what are some of the challenges you think now in terms of growing and retaining key talent? Because you're not going to get there without growing people and retaining the best talent. Where do you see the challenges?
Yeah, no, actually, this is probably what my job has totally changed. I don't get to be in front of customers as often as I like anymore. A lot of my job now is internal, looking at leadership, looking at, talent. How do we create a culture? And I think actually that's what it is. It is about a culture. If you can develop a strong, clear culture and sustain that through your actions, my action as the ultimate leader, but the wider leadership team and every individual, I think you've a better chance. If you're hiring people into that culture in the first place that fit as well, so if you're careful about who you bring in the sales area particularly, you don't be tempted by the really good sales guy, but who's a bit of a pain in the ass. You gave me a very nice introduction at the beginning of the podcast, and thank you again, saying you can succeed as a nice guy. And actually, I believe that genuinely, that you don't have to be pain in the ass or worse to succeed in life. You don't have to trample over people to get to the top. You can actually go to the top and you get there faster if you bring people with you, because you can stand on their shoulders and there's an awful lot less effort, share the load. And ultimately I happen to be the leader in my business, and I'm happy to be the leader. I think that's also important. I think you need to be comfortable being at the top. It can be lonely, if you're the CEO or the head of sales, it's not a place where people are going to be patting in the back all the time. So don't expect the pats on the back, because you're not going to get many of them. But what you can do is, if you're going in the right direction, and if you're still going, and if people aren't asking you to step aside, that should be enough you to know that you're actually doing a decent job, So I think that bringing people along that journey, I think creating the right culture, developing people, allowing people the space, and giving, being empathetic to people, providing that balance between space and pressure. You got to create the environment that's competitive, but not overly competitive. It's a fine balance, Paul. Yeah. I mean, you know this, and you've been talking to companies all your life, and you've worked in the past in big organizations, so you'll know this yourself. It is a fine. But you know what's interesting about it? I actually enjoy it because it's developing new skills. I'm learning. I'm just turned 50 last year. I'm learning new skills now, and there's skills that I probably wouldn't have been as interested to do when I was 27 setting up the business, because all I wanted to do was do deals. Whereas now I have a different level of satisfaction. I still love interacting with customers. I really, really do. I love when the sales guys ask me. I was asked this morning to do a call. One of our customers is Orange in France. I don't know whether you know. I speak a bit of French, badly, but the French people are very forgiving, and they're very happy. So there was a call, and the guy who runs we have our territory that includes France. He pinged me a note yesterday and said, I've managed to get Gilles-Marc, will you join the call? I said, love to, because I did the original deal with them, and there was only a handful of us 3 years ago. So, I was like, oh, back meeting my old pal. And that's how I see them. He's like, these guys are people I really enjoy being in their company, even if it's on something like this, just hearing them chat and, him listening to my rubbish French. It's a bit of fun. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is challenging. It's not easy, but I think it's a combination of so many different things.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me now, part of, you said there's a lot more of your focus is internally on growing and developing the team and the people within the team. Within that, occasionally somebody's going to get through the net. Somebody who looks good when hiring, says all the right things, makes you feel good. They connect all the dots. But then a couple of months into the job, there's a few red flags, and you got to nip that in the bud quickly. What are those? There's patterns I think you probably learned to spot over the years. What are the ones that you see that are the red flags that you kind of go, okay, we really need to nip this in the bud and deal with these, either modify the behavior or get them out quickly?
Yeah, in our place in Origina, it'll come because of the culture is quite open. We'll hear it from others, not in a kind of a whisper. It'll be said. There's problems there. Someone will flag it because actually we're so interdependent on each other. So one of the things we've done is try to create, each department depends on the other department, and they have goals, not across all of them, but they'll always pick one. Every quarter we pick some goals. We're not getting into massive detail here. This doesn't take long to do. We just think, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? You guys focus on this. You got to focus on that. Let's pick one that looks the same. And can you guys collaborate on that one? So there's constantly interaction between them, and areas they have to work on. So they'll spot very quickly where there's a problem. And if you do it at the team level, but also at the leadership level, that'll come out. So that comes out early. That's a good thing. Okay. Then you can try and figure out what did we do wrong in the hiring process? Did we figure out that they were actually had some quirk in their personality that made them look like a really nice person most of the time? The way some people don't know how to hold a drink. Suddenly they're like a bad day and they're, oh God, I don't know that he or she was like that. So is it that, or is it that actually we didn't do the right testing on their skill set, or actually we hired them for this, but actually because we're so fast moving, they've ended up doing this. That's our fault, not their fault. We've got to figure that out. And the resilience thing is coming into everybody these days because we're all working from home. It's a real challenge. We're locked. Most of the world is locked up. We're like, can't get out the door, can't go. If you're living in a city, you're not supposed to be going more than 5. Some places have curfews. Like we've got staff in France, we've got staff in Germany, we've got staff in the UK. And we've got staff in the US, we've got staff in Ireland, and we've got staff in the Netherlands. All with different kind of regimes going on. One of the guys in France, by the way, went over there, was in Dublin, went over there, and hasn't been able to get home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hopefully he's going to come back the next time the window opens for him to get back to Ireland. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So, did I answer your question there? I can't remember what your question was.
I'm trying to remember what the question was too, Tomás. Sorry, I know what it was. It was about when people get through the net.
Yeah.
What do you notice?
Get through the net, yeah.
Yeah, and what I think you're saying is, well, look, there's when that happens, when we see the red flags, our job is to sit down and figure out. It can be for any different reasons. Let's not jump to conclusions. And that if it is just somebody who got through and, it just wasn't a trait that was identifiable in the hiring process, well, we have to deal with that. But very often it's a case of maybe they need to be upskilled, or there's just something going on in their lives and they need a chance to discuss it, and that brings them around. So that's where I was going with that. It's not an immediate thing.
There's one thing I'd add as well. I think this goes across every aspect of business, but it goes across this area particularly with people. I think you need in a business, and the leaders need to be really good at making decisions. I don't mean that they have to make all the right decisions, by the way, because that's not possible, because we're all human. but they need to make the decision. And even if sometimes that decision is making no decision, that's fine too. But you've got to make up your mind and be clear about what you're doing, because actually, so when you see the problem, you decide: am I going to get rid of the problem, find out more about the problem? But you make a decision and you move quickly, and you don't keep doing it forever though either. You got to then make the next decision and move on. I see that in business all the time. It's that what holds people back is indecisiveness more than anything else.
Yeah. And do you have a process for decision making, a conscious one?
I think it's just that: make a decision.
Okay.
And that's what people want, though, as well. That's my experience as a leader. They won't tell you this. So you don't look for affirmation of it. So I can't tell you, oh yeah, I've got 5 guys told me this, but you know it instinctively. And you also know it because if you react to other leaders, you're reacting because they're making decisions, right? We're all living in this country and other countries, and we're looking at our leaders, and what annoys us the mostly is the lack of decisions. The key is make a decision.
What would you say then? Because I'm thinking also, it's not just the lack of decision making, it's that when the wrong decision has been made, is that they'd rather double down on that rather than put their hand up and say, you know what, got that wrong, let's make a different decision.
No, you have to change. But there's another thing to that decision making process, because you won't know everything yourself. So one of the things we did, and this is across the whole business, that I did from the very beginning. The reason I was able to run a business with 3 million turnover and 6 staff was actually we didn't just have 6 staff, and I was one of the 6. So it was that we had a lot of people around the business, advisors. So I started out with just people I knew, people like you and others who I would have gone to ask for information. And then what you do is you find some people able to give you that more regularly. I'm very happy to give it to you, and you can sometimes formalize that, and you can use them as sorry for the background bell. You can use them as advisors. So I actually created over the years a number of advisory panels. So collection of people, and some might have run for a period of time. So the very first one I set up was I had all these ideas how to bring the business forward. And what the great thing was, the very first meeting we had, we discussed strategy and this, that, and the other. But it was about 2015, and we still had debt going back to 2006 in the business. And all the advisors are looking there, and we're saying, and everybody said, you got to sort out the debt. All these ideas are great, but until you sort out the debt, it's the elephant in the room. And the great thing was, and I am good to make decisions, I know that about myself. Great, thanks guys. We'll have another meeting, which we never did because it was all I wanted. I got what I wanted out of it, was clarification that all those lovely ideas about where to bring the business forward was a fundamental flaw that was obvious to me, but I wasn't doing anything about because I was getting distracted.
Yeah.
And as soon as I brought a bit of wisdom in the room, that was it. Wisdom and experience and that kind of little bit arm's length. And they're not directors either, because directors then have different obligations. I might tell you that if you do that in a way and you pay them a few bob and you say, listen, help me out, pay some money. Most people, they're not expecting a lot of money. They enjoy, if they like the story. If you have a good story, they'll help you.
But something else you've left out of that, Tomás, and it's credit to you, that I think is hugely important, is that you listened to them. That a lot of people will look for validation of their own thoughts and feelings, but what you're doing is you're saying, look, I could have this wrong, tell me. And those guys would not be in that room if they didn't feel that they were being listened to as well. And I think that's hugely important in a leader.
Yeah. It is. We have to make sure you have the right people in the room first as well, though. So you could have got all the wrong people in the room, and they give you bad ideas. So, but if you get it right, if you get as close as possible to get the right people in the room, absolutely, your job is to listen. Because otherwise, why they do? Everyone's wasting their time, including you.
Tomás, we're up on time almost, and I had one last question for you, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat today. is you're not going to do this forever, right? You said you were 50 last year. There's plenty more gas in the tank, right? However, at some stage, and the business may continue, but you will unwind from it. What do you plan to do when that happens? Where do you plan to go and spend your time?
I'd love to go down to West Cork. I'd love to own a little pub or a little kind of a gastro pub down there. It's a great part of the world to go to hang out, to eat, water, sea. I love it down there. So I
Do I
mean, if I
recall
was
correctly, Tomás, that you bought a photograph of West Cork because it was meaningful to yourself and your wife?
oh yes, yeah, actually it's over there. Yes, yeah, yeah. So we yeah. Did I mention that to you? Probably did.
It's
Yeah,
it's 10 years ago, Tomás, but I do remember it because
yeah,
because somebody bought a photograph, and you know me, I'm into photography, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah.
here's why because that was it. It wasn't that it was a beautiful. I'm sure it was a beautiful photograph, but that wasn't why you bought it. You bought it because it was meaningful. There was an emotion attached to it.
Yeah. That's where I'd go. I would. My daughter always says to me, "I make a great sandwich." She said you should open a sandwich shop. So I was thinking maybe not a sandwich shop, but maybe I like a nice country pub, so I don't have to worry about. And I'd open it at the times I wanted to open it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be worried if I had made my money at this. I wouldn't have to worry about making money. I give people a good time with nice food, nice drink, nice countryside, fresh air. So yeah, that's probably what I'll do. So hopefully I get to do that before I get to be too old to enjoy it.
Listen, Tomás, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights and continued success and and the dream and West Cork.
Thanks, Paul. Great to see you. And
Likewise.
hopefully we'll get to meet in the flesh very soon.